striving and learning to be excellent and hard work and personal responsibility and discipline are completely fungible across all fields. All the things that I was doing were making me incredibly good at doing what I wanted to do, get me where I wanted to go, and not make me happy. That was the problem.
What are the habits of happy people?
So that's a big question. Getting less unhappy is different than the habits for getting more happy. All happiness comes from progress. That very little happiness comes from winning. It comes from progress toward a goal. These are the great secrets.
When it comes to writing with Oprah, like how did that whole thing come about?
I've learned so much from Oprah, I got to tell you. Literally one of the 5 most famous people in the world, and who has equanimity. The way to do that is to live a life that's impeccable in both public and private, and then never lie to anybody. Don't lie ever. Don't lie.
Arthur, it's great to have you here on the Learning Leader Show. Welcome.
Thank you. Been looking forward to it, Ryan.
So you grew up with one goal, okay? One goal, and that was to be the world's greatest French horn player, okay? What did you learn from your time growing up striving to be the greatest in the world at something?
That striving and learning to be excellent and hard work and personal responsibility and discipline are completely fungible across all fields. I thought I was learning to be the world's greatest French horn player. I did not achieve that. What I was setting myself up to do was to succeed in the other things that I tried. And that's because it's a laboratory of learning how to be your best self. And you can practically choose what the specific application of those skills is at any particular time. But once you learn about that kind of discipline and drive and hard work, man, you can deploy it all over the place. I had no idea, but I sure am glad I did it.
What made you get into playing that instrument?
My parents had an ambition for me to be a classical musician from a very young age. I started violin when I was 4 years old, piano when I was 5, and I got to choose my own instrument for the first time when I was 8. Which was the French horn. And that was what I was best at. I mean, it turned out I had a lot of natural ability on it. And so I was sort of better than the other kids. And that gave me a lot of self-esteem and confidence. And the more I did it, the better I got, the more I did it. And pretty soon, that's pretty much all I was doing by the time I was a teenager. That's all I really cared about doing. So I went to college to do that for 1 year and then wound up going pro at 19. Also, it helped to kind of be on academic probation. To start my professional career, mostly because I was dropping my required classes because all I wanted to do is play concerts.
How does one determine who the best French horn player is in the world?
It's a subjective judgment to a certain extent, but it really has to do with the opportunities that you're given. I mean, there are orchestras, symphony orchestras all over the world, and the principal French horn in a symphony orchestra is a coveted spot. And the orchestras are ranked. I mean, everybody knows what the best orchestras all around the world are. There are significant differences in quality between them. And then there's solo positions. There's usually 2 or 3 French horn soloists that will be the ones who play concerti in front of the orchestra, the ones who are traveling around playing Mozart's great horn concertos. And then a few people on the side that are doing other things. But we kind of all know it's not that big a community is the way that works out. It's kind of like pro cycling. In its way, you know who's the best based on who's doing well in the races.
So we're going to get into happiness, and I want to see how this being the best or striving to be the best relates to happiness. I like to think of like having an internal scoreboard versus the external or the scoreboard that others can see, and it feels, Arthur, like the people who are, you're the expert here, but it feels like the people who are happiest are really good about living more by that internal, that intrinsic scoreboard. Can you go a little bit deeper? Because you were striving, and I think that striving probably helped you develop work ethic and understand excellence and how to go for something and ownership and responsibility, like an amazing good qualities that probably have helped you where you are today in life. And a lot of that was extrinsic. But it seems like the happiest people are more intrinsically motivated and based. So how do you when you're thinking about those two things, what comes to mind?
Very, very adroit of you, Ryan. It was a good analysis. You'd be a very fine social scientist, I must tell you, because indeed, all the things that I was doing were making me incredibly good at doing what I wanted to do, get me where I wanted to go, and not make me happy. That was
Mm.
the problem. I mean, the main reason that I wound up leaving is because I just wasn't happy enough. And I was a married man by that time in my 20s, and a woman who loved me, and she said, "You're not happy." I said, "What are you talking about? Music is my life." She says, "Trust me, you're not happy. You could be a lot happier." And she helped me to understand that there was a real person within that had goals involving not just my lips, but actually my whole head, my brain, where I could be a creative person. There was a lot more that I could do. And she eased me into the concept of actually doing something else. I wound up leaving the business when I was 31 years old. And so from when I was 19 until I was 31, I was a professional French horn player. When I was 31, I left it behind and started my PhD. After doing my bachelor's degree by correspondence when I was finishing when I was 30. And it was like I was, walking from across into the promised land. I mean, I'd never seen anything like it, how many things that were out there to intrinsically motivate me through interest, through creativity. And I realized that I got a lot of great skills from being a very elite classical musician. But what I didn't get was the skill in being a happier person. And that's what I've been working on ever since.
Okay. What are the habits of happy people?
Yeah, so that's a big question. And that's a lot of what I do my work on. And we can start with the most basic habits. Now, there's thousands of things that they do, and there's lots of mistakes that they make. There are also habits that people engage in who are able to manage their unhappiness, which is different than the habits to get happier. Getting less unhappy is different than the habits for getting more happy. So one of the things that I do when I have people that I'm working with, or I'm working with CEOs, or I'm working with C-suites of businesses, is I give people an affect profile test. What that means basically, Ryan, it's a wonky kind of nerdy neuroscience way of talking about whether or not unhappiness or happiness is your bigger problem. And what you find is that half of the population is below average in happiness, and half of the population is above average in unhappiness because, these are averages of the way that this works. And when I detect that somebody has a happiness problem, I prescribe one set of actions. When I detect they have an unhappiness problem, I go the other direction. So those are the things that we can talk about, and those are different sets of strategies. Number one, know what your problem is. By the way, this is one of the great secrets to success in business. Number one, when you walk into a company, somebody hired you as a brand new CFO in a company that's struggling, figure out what's wrong and deal with what's wrong, right? Same thing with your own self. It's like, I'm uncomfortable. I have some insomnia. I'm grouchy all the time. I'm fighting with my wife. Figure out if you have an unhappiness problem or a happiness problem. And one of the ways to do that is to actually start looking at your affect profile. People can take that test for free, by the way, at arthurbrooks.com. It's called PANAS, PANAS. So go to my website and you can take it and you can find out if you have unusually high unhappiness or unusually low happiness, if that's your bigger problem.
What's the diff? Yeah.
Yeah, what's the difference?
The different, because like I was actually thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't know, which one am I? Because let me describe, because I feel like we have some similarities based on all of my research done leading up to this. Like, as a striver, as somebody who really is a growth focused person who wants to create a trajectory like this, both for me as well as the people I want to impact, this upward trajectory of always getting better, always improving. I remember after my first book, bestseller, and my book agent sends me a bottle of champagne, like, hey, take some time to celebrate, like, enjoy yourselves. And that champagne, that's from 2020, that champagne is still sitting in the cabinet. And it's not because, like, I'll have champagne, but I haven't. I still really struggle to celebrate big moments, good moments, and at times take it out on the people I love the most. And that, right. I hate that. I hate that element of whether, my wife or children. You shouldn't do those things, and you even know it in the moment. But if you're, I feel like this goes hand in hand at times with people who are striving and trying to grow and trying to get better at all times, that you struggle to be happy even when things are going really well.
Well, that's a real curse of the striver. And this is something that happens a lot. And part of the reason is because strivers, number one, they know something that most people don't, which is that arrival at a goal is not actually what you want. That all happiness comes from progress. that very little happiness comes from winning. It comes from progress toward a goal. Strivers understand that because they've been striving their whole lives. People who don't strive very much, they're like, hey, if I hit my weight loss goal, then I'll be so happy. No, you won't. The reason your diet's not going to work is because the reward for hitting your goal is you never get to eat what you like ever again for the rest of your life. Congratulations. There's a reason that Olympic gold medalists often fall into a very deep clinical depression after they win because they're expecting it to have been really so wonderful. Now, as they get older as striving athletes, they learn that the arrival is not that great. The problem that strivers have, who wisely like you understand that the arrival is not the goal, is that you shun the arrival, that you actually try to avoid the arrival as a result of that, or you find that you get kind of superstitious at the arrival, that the winning is bad luck. It's bad juju to open that champagne and enjoy it a little bit because that's going to slow you down. That's going to make it so you don't stay on the trajectory. Man, I got to win some more because, what you're addicted to, by the way, Ryan, like every striver listening to us. And by the way, only strivers listen to your show because that's why this is part of striving. Strivers got to strive. Is that that you got to be you're addicted to the stress hormones. You're addicted to the cortisol. What's actually driving you crazy and making you a little grouchy is the thing that you're addicted to because it's the excitement, the incitement, the feeling that you're actually making progress. And so I got to work with people like you to help you not to strive less, but to live more while you're striving and not to be completely stuck on the idea that if I don't make tangible progress this very day, then I'm useless. I'm fit only for some sort of extermination, which is how strivers often beat themselves up.
I assume you have had to deal with this yourself?
My gosh. Yeah, of course. I mean, It's like, oh, totally. I mean, it's just the most amazing. I'm 60. I'm older than you. I'm a lot older than you. I'm 60 years old. And still, man, I'm on that treadmill, baby. Run, 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 run. And that treadmill is getting faster and faster and faster so that if I got something, the first time I had a book on the bestseller list years ago, it opened at number 8 and it was like, this is awesome. If I had a book that opened at number 8, I'd be on like suicide watch at this point. Not really, but you get the point that I'm making. It's like, so what did I do wrong? Was it the marketing? Was it the content? Right. And the reason is because you always have to hit these higher and higher levels of attainment to actually even count it as progress. And that's actually classic addiction. That's like meth. That's like alcohol. That's like everything else. And what it's doing is it's the neurotransmitters in your brain are saying more than last time. You need more to actually get that feeling of the progress that you're trying to get.
Well, how do you live? And I don't know if I'd say be content, but how do you live and be an enjoyable person for your wife and kids to be around while also striving at the same time?
So you're always going to be that way, but you also can be a grateful person. You can also be a loving person. You can also be somebody who's working for the good and the success of other people. When strivers become unbearable is when they're ungrateful and they turn their victories into defeats because the victories are not great enough. And they don't stop to count the gratitude. They don't start to count the blessings that they actually have. I understand that you want to win more. When they actually don't try to work to make other people successful as well. These are the great secrets of people. So number one of the things that drives tons of very successful but miserable strivers is envy and comparison with others. That's a huge problem that they have. It's like, I got number 2 on the bestseller list, but good old Jim over there, he got number 1 on the New York bestseller list, New York Times bestseller list. So if I'm a loser if I don't get that, and I'm going to whip myself until I get that next time. That will impel you, but it's misery that's impelling you. It's a very dangerous fuel that can actually lead to anxiety. It often leads to clinical depressions and strivers, as a matter of fact, and you don't want that. That's bad stuff, man. That's a really bad situation. So what do? You make sure that when things are happening the way they are, including if you don't even like the rewards that you're getting, you stop to count your blessings. You stop to count your blessings, and there's all kinds of ways to do it. I make a gratitude list on Sundays. I write down the 5 things I'm most grateful for. I look at it each night for 5 or 6 minutes. I update it on Sundays. It's very important. That's to override these striverly tendencies that we have. The second is I'm always looking for a way to help somebody else be more successful. right? And so I'm thinking, and it gives you enormous amounts of satisfaction. But if you forget to do that, you just won't. You'll be thinking about yourself all the time. So misery comes from excessive autofocus. Thinking
Mm.
about yourself, thinking about your filth, thinking about yourself. When you find yourself striving and miserable at the same time, you're thinking about yourself too much. You got to get out of your own head. Number one, be grateful. Number two, help others.
Wow. Okay. I sense that you have written about research is actually me search. And I think this probably applies to a lot of authors where you do this work because first and foremost you've suffered from whatever it is you're trying to learn. And one of the ways that you then maybe help others is you're learning for yourself and realizing how helpful it is. Let me share this with other people. So can you talk about this research actually was me search?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in social science in particular, nobody does work on things that has no personal relevance or salience or valence to them. You know, I mean, I guess you could. I mean, you could be assigned when you're working on your doctorate to write a dissertation on something by your advisor, and that is not related to you at all. But when you're choosing your research agenda, you're answering questions that you want the answers to if you're a half decent social scientist. You know, years ago, I would do work on, you know, beauty and art and stuff that I was really interested in, but it wasn't a problem for me. And I recognized that the fact that happiness doesn't come easy to, you know, the Brooks family. I mean, we're a gloomy bunch, man, and add Striver to that, and you got a noxious brew. I said, look, I have the tools. I have the tools to figure this out. My wife was like, use your PhD, man. You got to, I mean, get your act together, man. You're helping other people with these other questions, but you're not answering the questions you actually need. And then when you start to focus on the things that you really need, then magic starts to happen because you're actually working for other people as well. And people can actually see the how personal these things are and how relevant these things are. And so since I've been doing work on happiness, it's just amazing. I've been focusing for years. I mean, the first book I wrote on happiness was in 2008. That's a long time ago at this point. But I've been focusing on it my whole career, full time, nothing else for the past 5 years. And I have been amazed at how much my business has exploded. I mean, my courses are oversubscribed, and the columns do really well, and the books sell a lot. And I give 175 speeches a year about the science of happiness, largely for business people. And the reason is because they want it and they know I care about it.
175 a year.
Yeah,
God,
man, I
you're like
love it. I'm
living on
crazy.
stage.
I know. I mean, and again, this is not exactly evidence of a balanced lifestyle. I love it. I just love it. I mean, I'm going to Pittsburgh as soon as we hang up today, and then Chicago.
So, so I actually did a Zoom speech on Friday about, and I got asked this work-life balance question, and you know, I never fully know what to say because it's like I'm not that balanced either. There are moments where I am better. It's really about work-life integration, I think, and figuring that out. What do you think about balance when you're asked that question, which I'm sure you are, how it relates to happiness and family and being present? What's your response to the work-life balance question?
So for me, I mean, looking at the research, not even as a personal matter, looking at the research, it's a problematic question because what
Yeah.
that suggests is that your work and your life are different. And I don't want that. I mean, when things are going well, I want work to be part of my life. What I don't want is to be nothing more. There's nothing more in my life. That's what we really want. I want a balanced portfolio of my Christian faith, my family life, my close friendships, and my work. That's my happiness 401k plan. That's my portfolio, is those four things. And I don't want to neglect one, two, and three. I can't neglect my faith. I can't neglect my family, and I can't neglect my friendships. So what that requires is an integration of these things. Now, I'm going to spend most of my time on my work. Time is short, man. I don't know how many years I've got left. My dad died when he was just a little bit older than I am now. Right. And I feel like I'm on a mission, an apostolate. I feel like I have a holy, it's like the Blues Brothers. I'm on a mission from God, but I literally believe that God wants me to bring as much happiness and love to the world using science and ideas as I possibly can. But I think God wants me also to love my wife and my kids and now my grandkids. And God wants me to be a good friend. and a good colleague, and not to be selfish about this. So what does that mean? That means I don't have to be like, I'm gonna I'm going to have this work-life balance portfolio. What it means is that I'm going to make sure I have a certain set of times that I'm doing things that aren't work. That's what it comes down to. So I have rules. And I'll give you an example of the rules that I have. I don't travel on weekends for gigs. You can offer me a lot of money for a gig, and outside of maybe 2 or 3 weekends a year, I'm going to say no. And when I say yes, it's because my wife, in the odd situation, is like, yeah, I'll go. But normally she's like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to see you up on stage. I've got better things to do. And second, when I am home, and I live in two places. I live in Northern Virginia. I live in Boston, depending on when I'm teaching and that sort of thing. When I'm home, I don't take dinners outside. I don't do it because I eat dinner with my family. If my family's with me, I'll take dinners when I'm on the road for work. But if I'm with my family, I'm going to eat with my family. I'm not going to say, honey, I'll be home at 8. No, that's not going to happen. And part of the reason is because they deserve it. But second, I want it. I want it. I want that love. And I know perfectly that I will, when I'm working at the margin. Clay Christensen at HBS used to write about this, the great author about, how you value your life. He said that people do this marginal analysis all the time. We're like, the 14th hour at the office or the first hour with my kids. I'll take the 14th hour at the office because at the margin, it looks like it has something good in the future. If you think that marginal way, you'll make the decision over and over and over again. And I did. When I was a CEO, I did. And they got revenge on me. They grew up. And I missed a lot of it. And so now I've actually reformed to the extent that I don't make those decisions. And now I live with one of my grandkids, and it's pretty sweet.
I love how you've set kind of guidelines for yourself. You're really thoughtful about it, not surprising. I'm going to shift for a second because I was talking to one of my good friends earlier today because he's a big fan of yours. He built a business over the last 25 years from literally himself to 1,000 employees. He sold a majority stake within the past few weeks, got wired an amount of money that will take care of many, many generations.
Eye-watering money, as they say. Yeah.
If he wants to, if that's what he chooses to do. Still the CEO, right? Private equity kind of came in and did their thing, which is happening a lot now. But I was curious for a guy like that who's built something from nothing, 1,000 people, right, responsible for those families' lives now because he employs them, made an insane amount of money, is going to stay on. And I think from strength to strength, as well as your most recent book on happiness, could apply and could be helpful for a person like this. It's not necessarily relatable to most people, but he's a friend of mine, and I'm curious because I think it could apply even if we didn't sell our business and make $150 million. When you hear about a story like that, and this person is definitely a striver, right? Has done it for 25 years and has built an amazing thing, and now is still doing it, right? It's not an old guy. When you think about happiness, when you think about from going from strength to strength, when you think about like still striving, but also celebrating a little bit because of what you've accomplished, what would you say to a person like that?
Well, a lot of these situations differ because circumstances differ with respect to people's age and how engaged they are in their work. But the story that you're telling me is the story of somebody who was not working for money. Yep. The story you're telling me of somebody who was working out of passion and who wanted to be deeply wanted to be successful. And by the way, thank God for that. Thank God for the entrepreneurs who've done that. That's why the free enterprise system is the marvel of the world and America's gift to the world. Make no mistake, we should all be fighting for the free enterprise system. It's so morally beautiful, but it doesn't protect the individual. I'm not talking about the customer. I'm talking about it doesn't protect the entrepreneur not because of the economy or because of marketing, because of capitalism, but because of our brains. Mother Nature has wired us to think that if you win in the market, you'll be happy. Why? Because Mother Nature only has two goals for Ryan and Arthur and your friend you're talking about, which is to survive and pass on your genes. And the way to survive and pass on your genes is to win with respect to resources like money and wealth, with position that has to do with power, with the admiration of strangers, with the ability to get people to follow you. And so you make the incorrect connection that if those things that I naturally want, if I get them, then I'm going to be happy because I want to be happy too. That's wrong. That's actually not right. And so it takes lots of introspection. Now, I work with people all the time. I work with retired athletes. I work with people who had fabulous careers in Hollywood and are stepping back because they were unhappy or because, their marriages were melting down, and they feel hollow when they're no longer in the hunt. Now let's talk about what happens there when you're in the hunt and it's working, when you're getting kill after kill after you're dragging in a lot of gazelles. What that does is that gives you a neurochemical framework that says you're a winner. You know when you're a winner because you have to know where you are in human hierarchies. We're a kin-based hierarchical species. We're not going to get away from the brain that we built in the Pleistocene. And that leads to these neural modulators that tell us you're winning, you're winning, you're winning, and it's great. Once you've won and you're doing it just because it's kind of what I've always done, but you're not winning anymore. You already won. There's nothing else to win, at least for now. It changes your neurochemistry in ways that will literally provoke a clinical depression. And so I'll find these guys that, they work at Goldman Sachs and they're making just train loads of money and they're really successful. And they retire at 49 with $400 million. And then within the first 6 months, they have a deep tan and they're having an affair with their tennis coach. And their marriage is falling apart. And they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. And everybody's like, congratulations. And they're like, I don't know. I feel like garbage. What's going on, man? I say, serotonin. I can tell you what's going on. I could do, I could scan your brain. I can tell you what's going on. But fundamentally, what's happened is that you won. And what that did was it made you feel irrelevant at that point. Okay, so here's the point. You can't get your relevance from getting back to the very adroit comment you made a minute ago, which was about extrinsic motivations. Extrinsic motivations are the rewards that come from the world. They come in 4 categories: money, power, pleasure, and fame. Fame also includes prestige or the admiration of other people. Those are the extrinsic rewards of life. Everything is related to those 4 rewards. If you're seeking your happiness through those rewards, you're going to be bitterly disappointed. They're not bad. They're just incomplete. You need to start looking for your happiness in faith or life philosophy, if you're not religious, family, friendship, and that means real friends, strivers, not deal friends. And every striver should know the difference. And last but not least, serving other people with the way you use your ideas and hard work and brilliance. Now, when you sell your company, it means you better have a basis of these other intrinsic rewards. You better have relationships on point. Don't sell your company if your relationships are not on point. And sooner or later, you're going to have to retire. So you got to get that together. And you have to find a way to continue to lift other people up with your work. That's what you need to do. And that's how I wind up coaching people with real life strategies, et cetera.
I think it's really important, Arthur, to write down what you believe is your life purpose. And I think it was you were 55, or you could call it a mission statement. And you said, I dedicate my work to lifting people up and bringing them together in bonds of love and happiness using science and ideas. And I think the critical part about a purpose or a life mission statement is that it involves positively impacting others.
Yep.
As you said, that's one of the ways to generate happiness is because sometimes when I'm not happy, it's because I'm too focused on myself and not thinking about lifting others up, not being grateful for the good things, not trying to help others succeed. And my life's purpose, I sat down with a coach and actually mapped this out, is to inspire others to value and pursue excellence. To value, I think too many of us are okay with mediocrity. So I want to inspire people by my actions, by how I show up for you, to value and pursue excellence. Excellence, the gradual result of always striving to do better. Striver, right? But I think when I see that impacting others, whether it's through emails, off to the side of the stage after a speech, or people you see when you're together in person, friends, whatever, that is it's almost an intoxicating feeling because you see the impact you're having on other people and the potential ripple effect that has beyond just that individual you're talking to. And so that's why I think it is very useful to define, write down your life's purpose, why you're here, what you're striving to do, and it has to be something to do with positively impacting other people. I feel like that is your stuff, man. Like that is
Yeah.
what you're all about.
Totally. And it's the basic moral lesson you get from any major world religion,
Yep.
any nutritious life philosophy, and by the way, all of the best science on human motivation. Yet, here's the problem. We're not wired to do it. And the reason is because Mother Nature doesn't wire us to do the things that are in the long-term interest of our happiness, because she doesn't care. She doesn't care. If you do what's you're left to your devices to do, you're in trouble. You're absolutely in trouble. You're going to pursue pleasure. So that's what actually, here's how you figure out what you tend to do. Everybody tends to do something slightly different. I have my students at the Harvard Business School. I have only MBA. I only teach MBA students, and I have 180 of them a year. I have 400 on the waiting list for this happiness class. And one of the things that I do is I play a game called What's My Idol, to find out what your primary extrinsic motivation is that you'll always chase when you're weak, and that will always lead you to do things that you regret later. So the things that you regret that you've done always link back to your idol. So want to play What's My Idol? Ryan, want to find out your idol?
Let's do it.
Let's do this.
I got a little nervous for a second, dude. Okay.
Come on, man. We're gonna do this in front of 250,000 of our closest friends.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
All right. So remember the four things, the four extrinsic motivations I talked about before: money, power, pleasure, and honor. Where honor means admiration or fame. If you're like an Instagram guy that's having a lot of followers, but for most people listening to us, it's not that. It's actually having the admiration of people who matter. Okay, so those are the things. Now, I didn't make up that list. That list actually comes from Aristotle via St. Thomas Aquinas in the year 1265, who said that these are, in his view, these are the substitutes for God. They have God-like characteristics. They're so powerful, but they're not God. Okay, so now for me, studying neuroscience and social science, it's an exhaustive list of the basic extrinsic motivations that we get that leave us unsatisfied. And so these are the idols, and that's why we play this game. Okay, now I'm not going to ask you which is your idol, because that's too hard. It's also not accurate. Here's how you get at it. Think of the four. Okay, you got them in your head: money, power, pleasure, honor.
Okay.
You got to get rid of one. Okay, now this is going to be the easiest question, because this is the one you really, of the four, you care about the least. Maybe you don't even like that much, that you don't generally pursue. You kick one away.
Power?
Yeah, how come? I mean, I can guess why, but I want you to tell me.
I don't know. This is not something I really strive for. I need to think about this more, but it's just the first one that came to mind of like, I want to influence people in a positive way. So like, is that power? Like, I don't know. Okay.
No. Okay. Power is you say jump, they say how high.
Right. Like I love like working on a team, but I don't need to be in charge of the team. Like in fact, I want to work with people who are like, I would want to work for, more so, or at least work together. So power is like, I don't necessarily care.
So answer me this. Why haven't you ever had a 9 to 5?
I have had a 9 to 5.
Well, why don't you have a 9 to 5? Why don't you strive for a 9 to 5?
Oh, I enjoy agency over my calendar, over what I get to do, over having a conversation with Arthur Brooks whenever we can, that type of thing.
So you don't want anybody to have power over you.
Right.
Basically. And if you don't want anybody to have power over you, you don't want to have power over others, unless you're a psychopath. And you're not. So therefore, that's why power is the one that, it's not that it's not an idol. It's actually an anti-idol. Huh. Okay. So we got 3 left: money, pleasure, and admiration or fame or prestige or honor. Okay. So you got to kick another one away, and it's going to get harder. Which one do you get rid of next?
Can you define pleasure for me real quick? I'm not saying that's the one I'm choosing.
Feels good, baby. Feels good. Just an animal thing. Feels good. And it might be, the compliments that you get. It might be a bump of cocaine. You choose your own pleasure.
I'll remove money.
All right. How come?
I need enough of it to support my family, and I've learned that, like, lucky to also have a wife who doesn't need a ton of money.
She's not a big spender.
No, no, no. And grew up, very,
Yeah.
very modest, and
Yeah.
I think appreciates we do well, but I would say that's probably next.
Yeah. So you have probably figured out at this point, being financially independent, that money, there's not that much great stuff you can get with money. It's not that much fun. I mean, it's like first class is better than coach. Private is better than first class, but the higher up you go, the more marginal the differences are. 7 cars, no, it's just garage space. Having a huge staff, are you kidding? What a headache. It's just an HR problem. And so this is a common thing.
Yep.
Okay, but now it's getting hot in here, man, because you've got pleasure and you've got honor, and you got to get rid of one of them. That doesn't mean you never get it. It just means that that's not a pursuit anymore.
The honor thing, like, I'm not a really I'm actually a terrible Instagram influencer. I'm not one of those. I don't do that very well. I try to post learn from me content, not look at me content.
Yeah.
But if you gain some prestige, you get a chance to really impact people in a positive way, which is my purpose for being here. So in a way, that's important.
If you as a basic pursuit, would you get rid of pleasure today, or, the
I guess
and admiration of others?
Well, so if you live by an intrinsic scoreboard, then you don't need the eyeballs and admiration of others, but the prestige can help you impact more people. So this is like a weird dichotomy. So, like, what do you think about that? Like, when I say that, because I've worked really hard. I've hired a coach. I've multiple people to define my core values, my purpose, the critical behaviors to be aligned with those core values, and to live them out, to try to eliminate envy, right, by working inward and working on myself as much as possible so that I could positively impact other people. So, like, how does that apply to prestige and impacting others in a positive way?
So that sounds to me like you've been able to take your idol and use it as a source of good. That your main idol, and use it as a source of good, largely to use it as a source of good. But you understand here that also means that in your weakest moments, that's something you could easily chase. You don't sound to me like a pleasure guy at all. You don't sound to me like a guy who's like, are you kidding me? I'm going to kick back and I'm going to go floating across the pool instead of doing something on my business. No, dude, striver.
Right.
And so what you've told me is that basically you understand the idol, you're managing it really well, you're using it as a source of good, but in your weak moments, that's the one you always have to watch, because you want people to like Ryan. You want people to follow Ryan, and for the good of them, but also there is a motivation behind that. And that's common. If it weren't common, Aristotle wouldn't have written about it. That's very common. And by the way, this is a very common thing. Me too. I hate power. I don't care about money.
I was going to say, what are you? So let's hear.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do you.
It's me. You did me.
The same? Exact same?
Exactly the same. Exactly the same. If I, in my weakest moments, I want this. And so I try to use it as a force for good. But the point is that when I'm not paying attention, it can lead me astray. It can betray me. And that's the important thing to keep in mind, because otherwise it'll be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to go for the maximum amount of money. Of course, I'm not going to go. Yay me. But at the same time, I want, I want people to like Arthur Brooks a little bit too much. And that's not a good motivation, because that kind of leads you to shade the way you say things sometimes. And you got to watch that. I mean, I'm getting pretty good at it. You're obviously really good at it, but you're going to have to watch it always, because it can get away from you.
If Oprah Winfrey called me and said my stuff made her life a lot better, and then said, hey, by the way, can I write a book with you? I mean, first of all, like, fall over and be like, this is a prank call. But that actually happened to you. How does that not, like, make your head be so big you can't walk out of that room?
Well, to begin with, I'm married to a Spanish woman who's very good at reminding me that I'm not important, you know? And the second thing is that this is the basis of my religious faith is all glory to God. All glory to God. Any opportunity that I've got, it's because God wants me to do something with it. And that's a very good, and I have a sort of a series of checks and balances that lead to it because I mean, there have been lots of times when I look at, by the way, people who have a high honor motivation, they tend to be naturally envious. And that doesn't mean you're driven by envy, but you'll tend to look at somebody else and go, "Are you kidding me? That book was number one? That book was number one?" You know, that kind of thing, right? Or that guy's show is the number one podcast. Are you putting me up? Oh man, people are so stupid. That's a form of envy, right? But that's the second cousin to the honor motivation that we get, which is a pride problem. And so you need to have checks and balances for pride. You know, none of us is Roman emperor, but when the Roman emperors would be, coming back to Rome after a victorious military campaign in Gaul, driving their captives before them down the streets of Rome, in their chariot, there would be a slave. And the slave had one job, which is to whisper, "Remember, you too are just a man, like any other." And so it's important that you surround yourself because, if you work hard, you play by the rules, you're smart, you have personal merit and responsibility, and you're a striver, welcome to America, baby. You're going to have success. Not every single day, but you're going to enjoy the fruits of your labor because that's what Free Enterprise is dedicated to doing, is to rewarding Brian Hawk. And you need the little guy behind you saying, "Remember, Ryan, you two are just a man." And even better if it's the Lord and your wife.
Let's follow up on that though. When it comes to writing with Oprah, like how did that whole thing come about? I mean, did she contacted you and said, "I want to write a book together"? Like, how did this happen?
So during the coronavirus epidemic, I started my column in the Atlantic, which comes out every Thursday morning on the science of happiness, and that was pursuant to starting my class at HBS, which started right before the coronavirus epidemic. So I was writing this column, it was getting a lot of readers. And when you have 500,000 readers a week, you don't know. You know who they are. And it turned out that Oprah was a religious reader of the column while she was locked down at her place in California. She didn't leave her house in California once for her estate for 2 years, as a matter of fact. And it's a big place. It's a nice place. But still, everybody was locked down. It was locked down, and people were looking for ways to grow and to learn. And she's an incredibly well-balanced person who uses everything as an opportunity all the way throughout her life. And so she started reading my column and paying a whole lot of attention to it. And then when my book From Strength to Strength came out, and a poster of it right behind me, but you've read it, and she read it on the first day and called me up. "This is Oprah Winfrey." And I'm like, "Yeah, this is Batman." It turned out, of course, it was Oprah Winfrey. It was the voice. And she said, "I read From Strength to Strength and I read your columns." And we started talking about something we might do together. And we did her podcast, her Super Soul podcast, which is about books together. She's so brilliant and such a great reader. And she's so insightful. She was in that podcast quoting me from my book by memory. And, she had read it once. It's amazing. And then we hit it off like a house on fire. She's awesome. We did a couple of other things. And then she said, "What if, I don't have a show. If I did, I'd have you on 30 times. I'd kind of launch you into the American discussion through the show." And I'm like, "You mean like Dr. Phil?" Anyway, and she says, "Kinda." And I'm like, "Okay." And then she said, "But I don't have a show. So how about if I host a book that we write together?" So I'm kind of a host, and you're the guest, and you're bringing all this expertise. And so we cooked it up. I went to her place, and we spent a bunch of time together. And then I moved out to California for 6 weeks while I was writing a big part of the book, and we were passing chapters back and forth. And that was the book, Build the Life You Want, which came out in September of 2023.
What was it like? Sending drafts back and forth with Oprah.
She's great. She's smart. She's nice. I've learned so much from Oprah, I got to tell you. As a happiness specialist, it's one thing to read studies. It's something else to look at somebody who's literally one of the 5 most famous people in the world and who has equanimity. The reason being, by the way, she's the striver. She has striven over the years. is that she's the same person in every part of her life. The thing that really cognitively disequilibrates a striver when they start to see worldly success is they're a different person in public than they are in private. You're
Mm.
bifurcating your personality, which is something that's really deleterious to your mental health. And so what you'll find is that anxiety and depression come to people when they're trying to be one person in private and one person in public. And they'll get really stressed out in public as a result of not being who they are. And then they'll go home and kick the dog and yell at their spouse and wreck their marriage. So the way to actually be successful and be rewarded to be successful is to be the same person in public as you are in private. And Oprah literally does that. So I've worked with her in public. We've toured together. I've seen her since I was a young man in her public life. And I have spent time with her at just the two of us at dinner. She's the same person. She's literally the same person. It's the greatest integrity. And it is such an incredible gift that she has, and a gift that she gave to me to strive to be that kind of integrated person as well. I have just unvarnished admiration for Oprah Winfrey.
Are you that way now too, or more, or at least more so than you were prior to meeting her?
I am. I hope. I mean, you've asked me a lot of serious questions, and I've tried to answer them with complete honesty.
Yeah.
And part of the reason is because I have no reason. I mean, it's a big mistake for me to start putting on airs, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a gap between who I am and who I appear to be. Oprah says, don't do it. Her life.
Don't put on what? I'm sorry. What did you say?
Put on airs. I mean, to act like I'm something that I'm actually not.
Oh, okay. Airs. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So but like, I think that's probably a common problem with people, and it's maybe hard to get to that point. Maybe it takes years, life reps, experience, adversity, all of the above. What about for someone who's a bit earlier in their life and they want to get to that point? I view it also as being very comfortable in your own skin. You know who you are. You've done self-reflective work that never stops. So you understand purpose, values, critical behaviors, alignment with all of that. So when you show up to a place, you just are you. Right. It doesn't really matter who's there or what you're doing. You're just you. And I know a few of those people in my life, some who are really good at that and some who probably are not.
Right.
And I feel like the ones who are good at it are in a constant state of being thoughtful people, of journaling, of being grateful, of thinking about who they are, their purpose, and what they want to be. That's what seems to lead to that like contentness and comfort in their own skin.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And there's a hack. So if you're young and that's happening, I mean, a lot of people listening to us are very successful in their companies and rising in the ranks, and they want to be one person at work, and they find they're a different person at home. Don't lie ever. Don't lie ever. Don't lie. I mean, and if you feel like you have to lie about something, it means you've made a wrong decision. Rectify that decision so that everything that you think and say could be aired in public. That means no secret life, nothing that you're hiding from your family, nothing that you're telling one group that you're not telling somebody else. And it's an incredible privilege to live that way. The way to do that is to live a life that's impeccable in both public and private, and then never lie to anybody.
The parenting advice or for kids, like, you want to know why it's good not to lie? Because if you always tell the truth, then you never have to remember anything, right? You just say the truth. And it's funny the way, like, to simplify it as if you're telling your 9-year-old, and these are conversations we have at home. It's like, if you just always tell the truth, you never have to remember anything. If you have like random lies or random fake stories, like, oh wait, what did I say? What do I have to remember? And that is exhausting. And that is a way to not live an authentic life.
Absolutely. And it's also not a way to live a loving life toward yourself and other people. It's an act of profound disrespect to yourself to be prevaricating, to be saying things that aren't true. People lie for different reasons, of course. Some people lie to protect themselves. Some people lie to puff themselves up, and some people lie to protect others. Now, lying to protect others is kind of a special case, even as a biblical case. What should you do if the Gestapo shows up at your door and says, do you have Jews in the basement? And you do, right? And like, okay, I got it. Or if your wife says, does this make me look fat? Don't be an idiot, Ryan. I mean, I got it, right? But the really dangerous things are when we're lying to protect ourselves or to puff ourselves up. That's hugely disrespectful to yourself and to other people. It's an act of it sabotages the love that you have for the world.
By the way, though, Arthur, on the comment about the clothes, okay? So I've had this conversation. It's funny with how many people we've talked about. Does this make me look fat? Okay. I think there is a way to be fully honest and not be a mean person, right? So it's, I like the other pant. I like the way you look in the other pants a little bit better.
Yeah.
I like that. And so I'm still honest. And she knows that I'm going to also tell her the truth so that my word still means something. Because if you lie to your spouse and you tell them, like, no way, or even if they look better in something else, then they don't know if they can believe you. And I want her to always know that she can believe me. And that goes for other people too. But so it's like, I'm not going to lie, but I'm not going to be mean, but I will say, like, I actually really like the other ones, the way you look in the other ones better. And I think that way you maintain credibility. This goes beyond just that conversation.
That's skillful.
It's a way to maintain credibility so that you can be honest with each other, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to know if, like, I look bad in something, though. I want her to tell me the truth.
Yeah, no, of course. I understand that. And it's funny because the dynamics of every marriage are different. You know, and my wife will say, "How do I look in this?" And I'll say, "You look smoking hot," and she'll be like, "Liar."
Wait, do you say it though if she doesn't, or does she just always look smoking hot?
She always looks smoking hot. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm a shallow man, but yeah, but you know.
Good for you, dude.
But it's also it's really important to, I know it's like one of us aged a lot better than the other. That's all.
Can I ask you a completely random question?
Yeah.
I thought this the second we connected. Dude, you're jacked and in like really good shape. What do you do?
Well, I work out every day. And this is the key. So I do a lot of stuff with Peter Attia and a lot of people who are in the longevity and fitness space. Just because since I've been doing what I'm doing, I'm kind of like the happiness guy that goes on everybody else's fitness and you know, personal development podcast. And so, you know, I can't look all dumpy when I'm getting on these particular podcasts to be perfectly vain about it. But more importantly, what I've learned over the years as a scientist is that the number one way that you can you can attenuate your unhappiness. Taking care of your body won't help your happiness, but it will lower your unhappiness. And I have a very high negative affect level. The number one way that you can do that, the healthiest way that you can do that, is by beating yourself up every single day. Second, I'm always trying to work my brain chemistry optimally so that I have 3 hours a day of unmitigated creativity. And I know the way to do that. The best way to do that is to get up an hour and a half before dawn. That's called the Brahma Muhurta in Sanskrit, meaning the creator's time in Vedic wisdom. But modern neuroscience shows that if you get up while it's still dark, you're going to have greater creativity and focus for the rest of the day. Beat yourself up while not trying to tax your, you know, your cognitive abilities while doing it. In other words, don't listen to neuroscience lectures while you're lifting. Besides, you won't understand what's going on, because every time your blood pressure fluctuates, you won't be able to understand what you're hearing. So lift, I'm talking about serious resistance training and high intensity cardio. You know, get with a trainer if you don't know how to do it, and delay your caffeine consumption until after that. Then after that is when I do my prayers. I go to mass every day. I'm a Catholic. So I go to mass every day at 6:30. By 7:15, I'm home. Then I have a whole bunch of psychostimulant in terms of caffeine. And then I get 3 uninterrupted hours of pure creativity. So the reason that I try to stay in really good physical shape is, number one, I know that that's the secret to maintaining a life with the lowest possible level of negative affect while not having unintended side effects that you get from workaholism or alcohol use. Second is I want maximum creativity and the best that I can actually get out of my brain. And so I have to sequence things in the right way.
Wow. So you're just super intentional about your body and mind every day. It's ritualized, it's your routine, and that is it's amazing how that consistency of routine leads to sustained excellence over time. I know we got to run in a second, but the other thing that, because some people say, "Oh my God, man, that would get old, or I'd get tired of doing the same thing every day," but you also have moved a lot. When I was reading and learning more about you and your wife have, like, let's go. Like, you'll move, you'll leave the state, you'll go somewhere else, you'll live somewhere else. You've moved quite a bit. What
20
makes you
times in 35 years.
20 times, like 20 moves in 35 years?
Yeah.
Why do you guys move so much?
We go when it's actually time to find new opportunities. And, sometimes we'll go because, for example, in 2019, I retired. I was a CEO. I'd lived in that place for 10 years. And then we moved to Boston because I became a professor at Harvard, and we had 3 moves in 5 years. And sometimes it'll be to kind of keep the family more centrally located, for example. But the whole point is there's a reason for doing it. It's not just that the rent came due or I'm in the witness protection program. It has something, it has more to do with there's a place that we feel like we need to be, and we're really good at moving.
And I think this idea that some of the novelty helps you remember your life more, right? Matthew Dix talked about this in Homework for Life. You got to document your days, but also the novelty. Scott Belsky also on this podcast about creating time with when there are like memorable, different, or hard events that helps you remember it more.
Yeah. I mean, there's some cognitive theories that suggest that when you live in a particular place, you remember the first and last years very intensely, and all the years in the middle get kind of squished into one year. So I suppose that the effect of elongating the cognitive impact of your life is maximized if you move every 3 years on average. I don't know. And we haven't given it that particular much thought. Now there's a cost, there's a cost, which is that when you're not geographically located, there's a sense of not being anywhere. And, that's real. My brother has lived in the town that we grew up in, about 5 blocks from the house that we grew up in, his whole adult life. And, he likes his neighbors, and and he gets a lot of benefit from that. So you have to realize that there are benefits to it. And, I like the cowboy lifestyle, man. Like, pull up stakes, go, baby. And my wife is the same way, thank God. But it's not costless.
Got you. One more thing before we run. You're meeting one of your students, okay, a graduate student at a big time university, and they finish and they go out into the world, and they're still not 100% sure what they want to do, but they do want to leave a dent, right? A positive dent in the world. They want to make a difference in a good way. What are some general pieces of life/career advice you give to that person?
So the 2 most important things to do to make a dent in it is, number one, don't worry too much about the first thing that you're doing, because you're going to change a lot, right? So that's the predicate to it. You're like, I got to get the perfect first job. Got to get the perfect first job, right? Another thing is, don't do something where you're going to sacrifice your ability to have relationships. And so don't take 110 hours in an investment bank if 5 years from now you think you want to have a wife and kids, or a husband and kids. And by the way, cheat code, that's what you want. That's what you want if you're actually going to be a happier person. Then when you're in a job, you're going to make the perfect job. You're not going to find the perfect job. And you're trying to do 2 things. Bring love to every relationship you possibly can. Number 1. Number 2, be excellent. Be great at what you do. Great at what you do. Why? Because what will attract all the good things to the world to you is that you emanate love and you show excellence. Those are the 2 things people want to be around, man. It's not that they want to be around money and they want to be, why? All those worldly idols, all they are markers for the things that we're talking about. Go for the real things that will attract all of the blessings of the world to you, which is love and excellence.
Love it, man. Oh my God, so good. Build the life you want, the art and science of getting happier. The book you wrote with Oprah, highly recommend. And then From Strength to Strength, you have more books too. But From Strength to Strength, Finding Success, Happiness, and Deep Purpose in the Second Half of Life. 2 are the most recent ones I've read that have impacted me the most and my friends. Arthur Brooks, dude, I really, really appreciate the work you put out in the world. And it was awesome to get a chance to talk with you. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for the work that you're doing, lifting people up. I mean, you and I share a strong mission. Stay at it.
Let's do it, man. Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.